Ben McKee, West Rucker, Go Vols 24/7 here inside of Thompson-Boling Arena at the Food City Center. Tennessee coming off of a close and ugly at times and frustrating loss to Kentucky inside of its home building on Senior Day. We'll talk about the X's and O's here in a moment, but I think first and foremost, at least for me, it's hard not to lead off with the emotions of Senior Day, especially given the comments of Rick Barnes after the game, Josiah Jordan-James, Dalton Connect. All three of them talked about how emotional of a day that it was and how that threw them off in the first half.
Yeah, I mean, every senior class is kind of different, right? Some programs, you might have a couple guys, sometimes you might have a whole lot of guys. They've had different levels of success. This is a special senior class at Tennessee, right? These guys have won the league title for the first time since 18. They've won it outright for the first time since 08. They've been through a lot. Dalton Connect's kind of parachuted in and been one of the best players in the country this season. These guys have done a lot this season, and they've meant a lot to the fans here. And, James was crying. Vescovy was holding it back a little bit. Connect was. They were. It was an emotional thing for them. And you don't want to excuse the start to the game, but I don't think we can sit here and be honest and say it doesn't have a factor. I mean, You're crying for Senior Day, a really emotional moment, and then like 5 or 6 minutes later, the ball's tipped and you're playing one of the most talented teams in the country. It does have an impact. Now, should it have been the difference in the game? Maybe, maybe not. But at the end of the day, it almost kind of was.
Yeah, I think it absolutely was. And that's not to take anything at all away from Kentucky because they were red hot from three. Reed Shepherd, Antonio Reeves, Justin Edwards coming out of nowhere. And he's been playing well the last month or so for Kentucky, but he was on fire. I believe he ended up making 4 today. So Kentucky played well. That's, I think, as well as Kentucky's played all season long. And they already have some impressive wins on their resume. But just because it wasn't Senior Day, that doesn't mean that Tennessee would have won if you replay the game. But I do agree that it had an impact at least for sure, especially the start of the game. But Tennessee, you got to do a better job of snapping out of it, and Tennessee unfortunately wasn't able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go ahead and tell you what some of my column's going to be today. It's that the best team in this league won the league title, and the best team on this floor today won this game. And they weren't the same team, right? I mean, Kentucky outplayed Tennessee in that game. Now, there was a questionable foul on a three-pointer there. Reeves has his whole foot out of bounds basically on a drive. They don't see it. He gets 2 points. Every little thing matters in a close game, right? But even in that game today, I still think the final 2 minutes of that game showed you 2 things. One, why this Kentucky team still scares you a little bit going into the postseason because they're so talented, but they're so young. And they show it at times. And I also think it shows you a little bit what's different about this Tennessee team. That had no business being a game late. Now, it's Tennessee's own fault that it got to that point, man. There's no question about that. But that had no business being as close as it was late. I mean, Tennessee had an open 3 from James that could have tied the game, and this place was going nuts. So it was not all bad, and it wasn't the end of the world, really, when you've already wrapped up the league title. But Kentucky played better than Tennessee today, and I think fairly won the game.
Yeah, and Cal made the point, hey, they won the league on Wednesday night. They're not in desperation mode, and not that Kentucky was, and he alluded to that. But Kentucky playing to lock up the double bye and continuing to improve and wanting to prove themselves. Tennessee going into their building earlier this season and knocking them off. Kentucky had a lot to prove, whereas, like you just said, it's not the end of the world that Tennessee lost this basketball game. So we'll see how and where Tennessee goes from here. The good thing is they have a week off. But the three-point shooting, I asked Rick about it and his thoughts on the three-point defense for Kentucky, or Tennessee's three-point defense defending Kentucky. I mentioned the hot shooting night earlier. A lot of it that resulted in open looks, at least what Rick talked about, was Tennessee's inability to keep the ball in front of them and the dribble penetration, and that leading to kickouts.
Yeah, I mean, I think I wrote that 4 or 5 times either on social media or on the board during the game. You could just see what was happening. Kentucky was beating Tennessee off the bounce. And this Tennessee defense does not normally get beat off the bounce like that. And what happens is you're an aggressive defense the way Tennessee's is. You get beat off the bounce, all of a sudden your rotations get way off. And somebody is going to get open, usually on the wing or the corner. That's how it happens. That's how you beat this Tennessee defense. Most people can't do it. Kentucky has the ability to do that. And I think, guys like Jemai Mashak, who are normally so great defensively, just weren't quite as sharp as they usually are. Ziegler being in a little bit of foul trouble early did not help. They just couldn't keep the ball in front of them, got lost on a couple middle screens, and no matter what happens, Ben, no matter what happens when you play Kentucky, you cannot let Shepherd and Reeves get clean looks. You can't do it. You cannot lose 15. You can't lose him. And they lost him a handful of times. Now, he hit some tough shots late, But a lot of those shots early in the game, he's open, man. Like that's the guy in this country, the guy you can least afford to lose. He's better than 50% three-point shooter. He's unbelievable. And they lost track of him, and I hate to say it because this has been such a good Tennessee team, but the old saying, you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. They got to get on him. They didn't get on 12 and 15, and they lost.
Absolutely. And lastly, Dalton did have 40. We should mention that in here. And Jonas Adu, I thought, played fairly well over the course of the game. Didn't play perfect, but was fine. Double-digit scorer, 5 blocks in the first half, almost a double-digit rebounder. He was fine today. Zakai got it going in the second half, but outside of those three, I mean, there was just little production elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, and I think Rick Barnes says what a coach needs to say, right, which is that's a little bit on Connect for needing to get his teammates more involved, and that's a little bit on the teammates for not, demanding the ball and not taking shots and making shots. I'm leaning toward the latter on that one. I'm not saying Dalton Connect is blameless, but I will go down swinging 10 times out of 10 with guys who confidently want to take shots. If you have a good look and it's one that you can make and you take it and you miss it, I'll live with that all day. It's when you start turning down looks that I don't like that. And you saw that with Tennessee at times today. There's so many possessions where if you go back and look at it, not just this game, but throughout the season when they're struggling, they will turn down a clean look from 3. And sometimes they'll end up getting a better look. But as many times as they do, they don't. And when you have a good look, Kentucky's not a great defense. They're going to give you some looks. You just got to step into them and take them. And I think Tennessee's got to do that. And you saw that again. Like, it's fun to watch 3 play, but you can't do it for 40 minutes.
No, you can. And at the end of the day, I think Tennessee's going to be okay in the long run. I view this as a blip on the radar. Yes, there were some X's and O's that need to be cleaned up. But I think even the root of the issues with the X's and O's was the emotions of senior day. And I think that just kind of threw everything off to start. And the good news is you're not going to have another senior day this season. So I don't think that's going to be an issue for Tennessee once again. But there's no doubt that there's some things to learn. And been a brutal 3-week stretch here. And now you get a week off to rest your feet, get off your legs, and that time of year.
You'd taken going into this stretch, if you had said you're going to go 3-1,
take it all day
and
long.
you're gonna win the title, I think Rick Barnes, very quietly off the record, would bite your arm off to accept that deal. So, you're playing with sort of house money today. You are playing for a 1 seed. I don't want to disregard that, but this one loss is not going to be the difference in that. It's going to come down to a bunch of different factors. It's annoying. You're Tennessee. You don't want to lose to Kentucky.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you won this league. You go into there as the number 1 seed next week. You're going to have a 1 or a 2 seed in the tournament. You're all right.
Absolutely all right. We'll have plenty of coverage coming out of this loss, and although there's a week off, we'll still have plenty of basketball coverage leading in to the NCAA tournament, or the SEC tournament, I should say. A couple of awards are going to be announced next week, too, before Tennessee's back in action.
I wonder who's going to win that one.
Yeah, we'll see what happens there. But in the meantime, he's Wes Rucker. I'm Ben McKee.